This guy who's been playing almost legit every hand. He's been raising, calling, everything in every hand. He opens, we call, we flop flush draw, backdoor straight draw, whatever, we flop quite good. We check it, we expect him to bet 100%. We raise to build the pot against his weak range. We double barrel. He calls. At this point, he could have flush draws, Jack X, whatever, some spade draws, like Ace King, Ace Queen, Ace 10, he calls anything. And knowing that he calls anything, and the river is a higher card than Jack, he could now think that, oh, my Jack is not good, so we have a mandatory shove, and he just legit snapped with Jack 9, of course. And that's it. Okay, this hand is an easy, fold or just called pre-flop, but for some reason we thought, we're just gonna free bet this guy because we have him marked as a weaker player, and we're gonna, bluff him or whatever. And we free bet, he calls, we expect him to have a really wide range. Okay, not the best flop, not the worst. We see bet small, we expect him to call, quite a lot. And we're gonna double barrel because that's why we see bet small, to double barrel on almost any cards. But now the thing is, we turn showdown value, so we beat loads of his hands. So this is an easy check, and he checks back. Okay, so when he checks back, it's quite very weak. And the river is very interesting. We're trying to get to showdown, we check. Trying to get to showdown, we check, and then he bets this small. So I know this is obviously a value bet because he just simply does, he under bluffs post. So this is I know it's a value bet, but I'm thinking, he could value bet a weak case, unlikely. Or maybe for this size, he could value bet a weak case, maybe some like 10-7, 6-7, some bullshit 2-pair, which we can make him fold. And especially since we have, we block the straight, we block the nut straight, we block some flushes. And we can't just, there's no way we're calling this, so we have to go for it. We raise 21, and he actually snap calls. And he's got the fucking 9-8 offsuit. Unlucky, never lucky. Okay, this hand is a great example of know who you're playing against type of situation. So this guy is so hearts. This guy always free bets, and he barely plays any hands. Very, very rarely plays any hands. So whenever plays, he free bets, whatever he's a tag, whatever he's wanna be pros, whatever. So we open, and this time he just calls, which he hasn't been doing at all. So alarm bells already ringing. It could be like really weak, but also really strong. Also, I've been folding to his free bets a lot because most of the time I have garbage, and he's got the NOS probably. So okay, this is the flop. This is such a dry flop. I'm thinking, okay, let's check, and he could probably stab with like queen jack off, king queen off, king 10, some bullshit like that. And we decide to check raise because he also is very tight, so he just easily folds, especially on such a dry board. So he calls, and when he calls, already alarm bells. Now this turn allows us to continue barreling big. If this wasn't the turn, I would just check and just check fold to this guy. Actually, maybe not. This time I'll just check call. So we barrel big because this is like one of the best cards in the deck, if not the best card in the deck. We barrel big, and he quickly calls, so it's already alarm bells. And if the turn is a brick, we have to slow down. The turn is an absolute brick, and we just have to slow down. This is a mistake. If we go all in again, it's a mistake because he's already shown a lot of strength, especially against these very tight players. Virgil that only play the absolute top of range. So I check, and he thinks for like 30 seconds and checks back pocket aces. You see what I'm talking about? So bad. Unlucky. This is another punt by me. As always, we have a limper, and this guy raises. He's quite tight, definitely on the tighter side, so we can easily just call here, but for some reason we free bet. Maybe I haven't had a hand in a long time, so we're just maybe a bit bored or something. But also I just love these hands, like, this queen 10, queen jack, king queen suited hands, love them. And this is obviously a very bad flop for our range, for our hands. It's just horrible. We can just easily just check give up here. We check the flop, he checks back. And here on the turn, obviously we have some outs, have some backdoor stuff, and we can still make him fold. Maybe king queen, king jack, just the Broadway cards. Maybe some flush draws. maybe a one pair hands, maybe he still has an open-ended, and he's got like ace5, ace6, ace7, but probably not because he's got on the tight side, so most likely he's got some two Broadway cards. And we bet. We don't need to bet too big, I think. Also, if you had something like jacks or queens, maybe we bet this bit the same size. We wouldn't bet much big anyways, because we try to remain balanced as often as I can. And here on the river, this is just a break and also a very bad river, because now if you want to represent aces, there's a 3-4, there's a 5-liner, so we can't really we can't really value bet aces big for a big size, so our value size will have to be small. At the same time, if you go small, he's not gonna fold maybe one pair hands, and especially overpair is hard to make him fold, so we're targeting his flush draws and one pair hands and maybe ace king, I suppose. Not really sure, but we can't go too big, so I think about half pot is alright. That's the same side we go with aces. And of course he has a fucking overpair, because why not? Unlucky. Alright, so this hand we have two limpers. This is a new guy. It was a new guy. Don't really know anything about him. I don't know much about this guy either. So anyway, we raise for value. Okay, free ways to the flop, and this flop, it obviously sucks. But we want to bet the third to, get away from making fold like 10-9, something like that. We bet 3. Actually, we want to bet the third to get one of them out, to make it heads up. We could also bet bigger, like half pot, which probably is more, is more correct. Now we bet the third again. The reason we bet a third is we don't want to bluff too big into so many people and against unknown, and possibly fish calling stations. I never fold. Just on this river is obviously a blank, so now maybe he'll fold his spades, his 5, but unlikely his overs like ace 10 or something. If I go like represent a value range, represent a thin value bet. So if I got about half pot, yeah, maybe I should have been like 20 something. But it's dangerous because he's been calling. You don't really know what he has. So he shoves, of course, he could shove like ace-6, but he could also have a 3 or a 9 or something. We don't really want to go ballistic against an unknown who also, has shown fishy tendencies. So I think the correct play with this hand would be to just probably just check the flops, what they do, maybe just bomb turn, and if they call, give up. Probably. Well, you learn, you live and learn. Bye bye. This one is an interesting one against a weaker player. So he opens, we free bet for value. He calls on this flop, even though he smashes his range, smashes our range as well, but I don't think he thinks like that. But we also have backdoors, so this is a mandatory c-bet. We c-bet small. We expect him 100% of the time to call. We call, and now we turn into value bet mode. We don't need to bet too big, especially on this size. So somewhere around half pot small and then half pot should do it. So we bet about a third. We could maybe bet a bit bigger, especially against this guy. So he quickly calls. And then on the river is interesting. He could also be trappy, so he could trap like 2 pair, like king queen, something like that. And we decide to check because we don't think we can get value from worse, only ace 9 worse. And we check, and he bets quite big. I mean, a bit bigger than half pot. At this point, he could definitely have ace 4, ace 7, some 2 pair. So yeah, thinking that if I call, I don't think I'm good most of the time. And also because we have the 10, so we block the 10 jack, whatever. We decide to check raise quite large here, like about both sides. Maybe we can check raise bigger, and he quickly folds. So maybe he had nothing, but at the same time I can't risk calling, and then he just shows me like king 4, some stupid like that, because he's quite loose. Okay, here we open king 8 offsuit in the cutoff. 5-handed is a great hand. And we also want to play hands with the big blind, because he's marked as a a loose one, a weaker player overall. On this flop we can do whatever. We can do anything, whatever we want, but I decided to c-bet small. On the turn now, he leads half pot. Now he's been doing a lot of leads almost every hand, so I'm not reading anything into this lead. into this lead. Also, we could fold, but we could still have the best hand. And also we could bluff him on the river on cards such as this one, because he could have, I don't know, ace-9, some 10-9. And now on this card we have this king of diamonds, beautiful, which we can use to bluff big on this river, and he donks for half pot again, so he could have 4-5, ace-9, 9 deuce, legit any two cards, so he could have some very bad two pair that he has to fold on the big raise on the river. You can even raise bigger here to make sure that he folds that he folds most of his hands apart from flushes and possibly straights. Yep. This hand is a great example of why you should always know assume your opponent's range before free bet bluffing, because we can easily just call with this hand and the outcome would have been probably a bit different. So he opens and we don't know anything about him, and we're like, we always we're gonna free bet queen 10, especially in position. It's just such a pretty hand. And he 4-bets, so whenever people 4-bet, usually is the absolute. So we're getting some pot odds and in position and suited, great hand. We could possibly crack his aces. So this is quite a good flop. We definitely want to see a turn, so we're expecting a small c-bet, and he does very small. This is probably kings, but we can't go anywhere. We call to see a turn, and the turn is a brick. We just fold now, and we snap fold.